right, welcome everyone. It is a great honor to be here. I want to start off by giving a big compliment to ADGM. Being part of this ecosystem now for the last, I would say, 1.5 years, it's really amazing to watch this transformation of ADGM happening right in front of us, right? Like we can see it with the event, which is even better, bigger, and more professional this year. So I think next year will be even more exciting to watch it unfold. I would also like to reflect a little bit on what's been happening on the blockchain space, right? So we've been operating in blockchain. I've personally been in blockchain for the last 15 years now, right? And so we've really seen a huge evolution of the space. And I think this year is really the year where we can say that things have gotten real, right? BlackRock entering, building up their own tokenized fund, ETFs coming up, and launching, right, really raising hundreds of millions of dollars, billions, and a very much forward-looking and positive administration in the United States. And everything is really starting to bloom, right? Even though AI is the latest hype and the latest trend, I think that this year is really where we've seen this inflection point in blockchain, right? Stablecoins are really taking off, Circle is really taking great lead there, exchanges, and the next part is obviously tokenization, right? So the really exciting part about blockchain is that we've used the last decade to build certain building blocks, right? Starting out with DeFi, starting out with the base blockchain, which enables this frictionless exchange of assets, but then building applications on top that really help us create new financial markets, right? Tokenization is at the centerpiece of that, but what's really exciting of that, as part of that, is really how do you then actually utilize these tokenized assets? So what started out sort of like as a house of cards, if you will, right? Because DeFi was really a hyped up market, and it saw itself also crumble a little bit over the last few years. It's now really starting to bloom again because now tokenized assets, real assets, are starting to be injected into these protocols that we've built and are helping us to build a new financial ecosystem. And so what we have focused on with the pioneering work of ADGM, a couple of partners, is to really start building up a tokenization ecosystem here in ADGM as well, right? And what's really amazing about this is that we can bring safe, stable, yield-bearing assets on-chain, right? We can use those assets and empower investors to utilize those assets within the entire blockchain ecosystem, and then with that, create entire new use cases. So we've helped to set up the first tokenized treasury bills fund, and right now we're actually in the process of setting up a few more funds with some partners to really build up an entire tokenization ecosystem. We're still at the start of tokenization, right? So if we look at the treasury bill market, the tokenized treasury bill market today is around $3.5 billion, right? But this is really just the start. We're talking about trillions of dollars of assets that are going to be tokenized and are coming on-chain. Because it makes a lot of sense, right? Instead of you tracking your fund's ownership in a centralized Excel sheet, not being able to know what the net asset value is at the end of the day, because like a huge spreadsheet, you can now do things in a tokenized way. And the key innovation here is that instead of having a share certificate, you will have a token. And this token represents legal ownership in the fund or in a certain asset, right? It could also be trade receivable, invoices, bonds, or other equities, right? Now, once we have this token, we can then start doing really amazing things, right? And so I think this is really what I want to encourage all of you to really think further, because tokenization is just a start, right? What we really should focus on is building up an entire ecosystem. Because just tokenizing a fund is kind of boring if you think about it, right? You can't really do more than you can do today with these assets just because they're tokenized. What you need to focus on is building up an entire ecosystem around that. And so what we are focused on is really solving the tokenization piece, right? This is where it's really critical to work with forward-thinking regulators like ADGM that are willing to take the first step, right? So we've actually set up the first directly tokenized fund, where each token represents legal ownership into the fund itself. And so this is really the first start in all of this, right? So then once you start bringing these tokenized assets on-chain, you can start thinking about what can you actually do with those tokenized assets, right? And instead of building up this entire blockchain ecosystem with volatile crypto assets, it makes a lot more sense to build it up to have a strong foundation with these tokenized assets, right? And so what we are building at the moment is really an entire ecosystem where you can then actually utilize these tokenized assets, right? So you have a yield-bearing asset. You can actually use it as collateral within a stablecoin, right? You can use it within an exchange. You can trade it frictionlessly 24/7. You can take out collateralized loans, right? You can loan against these assets in a 24/7 way and much cheaper than the traditional system, right? And so I think this is really the premise, and this is the promise of this tokenized future, where we are building up an entire new financial ecosystem, starting out with tokenization, but then actually leveraging these blockchain rails so that the assets can be exchanged in a frictionless way, and so that we can really enable these new use cases that are not possible today, right? So I encourage you all to check out the website, where we've actually built up the entire infrastructure, connecting with the fund administrator, connecting with the fund manager, to really make it seamless to actually deploy capital into these tokenized assets, and then to start managing and leveraging them. And so over the next couple of months, we're going to really focus on expanding accessibility to this infrastructure, right? Making sure that we can work with other fund managers and with other partners to really make it globally accessible. I think as a closing remark, I want to talk a little bit about the permissionless blockchains, right? It's the same as was happening with the cloud, where initially all the large financial institutions were sort of against the cloud, right? Because they were saying, hey, it's not private, it's not secure. We want to really keep control over our data. We want to keep control over our infrastructure. And look at where the cloud is today, right? Everybody uses some form of cloud, either it's AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or others. And I think the same is going to, or is starting to happen with permissionless public ledgers, right? Because initially the talk was all about how permissioned blockchains are the only way to build up this financial ecosystem. But many of those permissioned blockchains have actually failed over the last few years, right? And I think with the great introduction of the Build Fund, which was introduced by BlackRock on the Ethereum blockchain, we've sort of seen a shift, right? Where the shift is really no longer about permissioned private networks, but really about public networks, so that anybody can connect to them. Where it's really a public goods infrastructure where we can then now build this tokenized future and this tokenized ecosystem. So we as a company, we obviously really focus on building up this base infrastructure with IOTA, and we're also connecting with other blockchains like Ethereum, like Solana, and so on, to really make sure that this tokenized future is not built on private permissioned rails, but really on public permissionless ones, so that anybody can actually benefit from this tokenization. And so I really encourage all of you who are actually part of a traditional financial institution to really think more about how permissionless blockchains can really be part of your strategy, building up these financial ecosystems. Thank you.